How did Royce and I meet? Well, that is a long answer.
Well, it's kind of disputed. Like, we go back and forth a lot because I know the correct place and location and time when we met, and Bekah doesn't. We first met at Bekah's house in Florida. She says that this didn't happen, but it is seared into my memory. I graduated high school in 2006, and when I graduated high school, I moved to the Atlanta area to work as an intern.
So I was 15. My mom got a job in the Atlanta area, so we were moving, and it was my sophomore year in high school. Royce was actually moving up to the Atlanta area to work for the same company as an intern.
And so what Bekah probably remembers is meeting at a restaurant called
Beef O'Brady's, which I don't even think those exist anymore.
And I have like a vague memory of just sitting down and eating there and like seeing her for a second.
I remember a little bit of that day. I was eating mozzarella sticks. So we met at the Beef O'Brady's and we became friends. Partly
because it was a small town and we were going to a small church, there were not a lot of people our age. Obviously, we became friends.
And so we started hanging out a lot. A few months into knowing Royce, I started being more interested in him. And I was probably interested in him for quite some time, but he didn't know, and I wasn't gonna tell him.
We remained friends about 3-ish years. Things started to get a little more serious. There was this period of time when we said, let's see how many days in a row we can hang out with each other. And so we did that, and it ended up being like 43 days or something. A couple times we had to like go out of our way just to like meet at McDonald's and have a hamburger or something just so we could see each other that day.
We're hanging out a lot one summer, like a lot, hanging out a lot. I knew how I felt, but I had no idea how Royce felt. So my mom
kind of sat me down and said, you need to figure this out because you guys are spending a lot of time together. You know, really fair for her to do. I would do the same. I would have done the same thing for my child. And so I'm like, okay, I'll figure it out. And like any 21-year-old, like I was at the time, obviously you're looking for a girlfriend. I mean, maybe some 21-year-olds aren't, but I was looking for a girlfriend. I was trying to decide if, obviously Bekah was cute. It was just the question of is this a person that I want to date?
So about a month later, we were going to Florida back to visit friends and family. And we all went together because we're from the same town.
I knew I was gonna ask her out. And so we were going to the beach. I was gonna go surfing, which is something I didn't get to do very often, and she went with me. And before we got out to go, I was probably the most terrified I've ever been in my life.
That's where Royce is like, hey, so I think we should date. Do you want to be my girlfriend? I was
like, let me think about it. She says, let me think about it. And I say, okay, well, I'm gonna go surfing. I came back and she's like, yeah, let's do this.
Of course, on the inside, I'm like jumping up and down because it's been like, 2.5 years that I've been kind of crushing on this guy, and I've had no idea that maybe he felt the same way. I don't know, I was like 17 or 18. So we dated for about a year and a half. A little less than a year and a half. We were getting to a point where I was like, okay, where's this going? It's been a year. Like, are we gonna keep moving towards marriage, or are we like, what's going on? And I kept getting weird vibes from Royce.
I got to know many, many aspects of Bekah, and some of those things I didn't really care for, if I'm honest. And I'm like, well, I don't wanna have to deal with that in a marriage, so marriage is not right for us. Let's take a break.
Let me just say that. We went on a break for like 2 months, and I always said I'd never go on a break, just break up, right?
By the end of that break, we're done. We're gonna be friends, we're not gonna get married, we're not gonna date anymore, that's it.
Downside was, we still lived in the same town, very small, went to a small church, and we were still like around each other a lot.
A couple years later, we're still friends, things are still pretty cool, and then it comes to around the 2012 time period where I was kind of ready for a career change. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to leave the Atlanta area, learn something new. So I decided I'm making a career change.
I decided I'm gonna move back to Florida.
So one day my car had broken down. I had a really, really old car. Car broke down. Bekah comes to help me, like give me a ride or something. And that's when I told her, hey, I'm changing jobs, I'm moving, and I'm never gonna be back again. And I don't know if it was in that same conversation or a conversation shortly thereafter, she says to me,
"Are you ever gonna like pursue me again?" And he was like,
no. Because at that point, I was over. I don't want to marry her. No. So like, I cannot give her any hope at all.
That's what I needed before I moved. I just needed to know where he was because like I need to move on from him. I feel like this has been dragging on now for 5 years. Like I need to get over him.
And that was it. I left and she moved back to Florida.
And Royce and I are still in contact. So I moved back in February, and fast forward to October of that year.
I realized I made a mistake. Bekah's a great girl. I messed up, and I need to tell her that I messed up. I wrote her this
letter from Royce, and I was like, okay, this is strange. Mind you, I am actually renting a room in his mom's house. So here I am in Royce's childhood home, renting a room from his mom because she was really nice and I needed a place to live. And he was like, why don't you ask my mom? Maybe she'll rent you a room. And I get home and there's this letter from him practically saying like,
I would marry you tomorrow. I'm sorry. You're amazing. This really intense letter.
Not expecting it because, okay, here in my head, I'm like, okay, he's never gonna pursue me again. I know it had been like a year since he said that, but it's what I was thinking in my head. Like, we're just friends. I'm moving on. You're moving on. So this letter came to I was shocked. So I texted him immediately. I was like, hey, I got your letter and
I'll get back to you. Talk about the longest week of my life. It's like you pour your heart out, your heart and soul. And they're like, let me get back to you.
Because I didn't know what to say. Like, I was not in that headspace. And I actually went over to my friend's house and I like read her the letter and we talked about it and I was like crying and I didn't know what to do. And I was like, I knew that what my answer was gonna be. I just don't think I wanted to tell him.
And so I'm just sitting there on pins and needles, waiting. Finally, she's like, okay, I'm gonna call you. She calls me and she's like,
I cannot say yes to you. I don't want to lose your friendship either. And that's, I think, where the struggle was because Royce and I had known each other at this point like 6 years and we had become really good friends. And I did not want to lose that, but I knew that what he was wanting, I could not reciprocate.
It's like, okay, that's it. We hung up the phone. I went back to my room and I talking to my roommate about what happened. I was just really destroyed.
So 2 months go by, he's coming home for Christmas and I'm still living at his mom's house and he comes home. We sat down in the living room. He was like,
Bekah, we gotta get back together. It'd be so good. And I was like laying out my argument, trying to convince her, and she just was not having it.
And I was like, I can't say yes to you. I just can't. It's not fair to you. I can't. And he's like, and I can remember this like it was yesterday. Him sitting in his mom's living room and I'm on the couch. And he was like, I really think that we'd be great together. And I was like, I can't. And that like broke my heart. I'm gonna cry thinking about it. Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, okay, well that's it. I just cannot be friends with you. I've just gotta completely cut myself off so I can move on. And I'm sorry, but that's just what I have to do. So she left my mom. She had somewhere else to stay, and that was cool. There wasn't any animosity between us. It was just like, this is just the way it is, and that's just how it's gonna have to be. So I was like, okay, fine. So I moved on. We didn't talk. I unfriended her from Facebook. Gone. Cut. Nothing. The first time in like 6 or 7 years, maybe even longer, that we hadn't talked or seen each other or texted or anything.
About 11 months goes by. And I'm hanging out with a friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours. She was like, yeah, Royce is coming to town and we're gonna grab lunch. And I was like, what? Why wasn't I invited? Like, we're friends. Like, why was I invited? I was offended.
Well, Bekah finds out about this. I don't know how. And she texts me and she says, hey, I heard you're coming back into town. Can I tag along to the lunch? I'm like, sure, whatever. I'm over you. It's no big deal. We're just friends. Easy.
So we meet up for lunch, and her and I are together, and Royce comes up, and he had just bought a new car. He was looking so cute. And he gets out of the car, and I was like, oh crap. And he's like this new person, this grown man. And I was like, oh crap, like this is not good. So we hang out, and we hang out a few times that week. And I was like freaking out because I was like, I made a mistake. And the year that we weren't talking, I feel like I had grown a lot as a person. I had grown a lot in my faith. And I feel like I was at a completely different place in my life. And so when I saw him, I was like, I made a terrible mistake. He is like everything I'm looking for in a life partner. So I'm like calling my mom, I'm calling my friends, I'm like, I don't know what to do, and I'm praying about it, and I'm like, what do I do? And I was like, I just gotta tell him. You know, we've been friends now for 7 years, like, I just gotta tell him.
She's like, hey, can we meet up at this place? I just wanna talk to you. I'm like, sure, but I don't like know, like, I'm like, what could this be about? Like, surely she's not gonna say, hey, I like you. So we go to a tea house because she knows I like tea. You can tell she wants to say something, but she's really afraid to say it. But I'm like not gonna like help her out at all. She's gonna say something, she can say it on her own, and I'll hear whatever she has to say. So eventually she gets it out. She says,
I made a mistake. Would you reconsider your offer that you made me last year? And he was like shocked, I could tell, not expecting it, and kind of confused. And he was like, I was not expecting you to say this. I need some time to think about it. I was like, okay. Not what I wanted to hear, obviously.
And I'm thinking about it. I'm talking to a couple of my friends. I'm talking to my mom. And I decided,
no. I don't want to date you. I've moved on. I'm over this, and no. I was like, okay. Like, completely rejected. And I was like, wow, so this is how this feels. Like, this is how you felt last year. He was like, yep, totally sucks.
I've spent a lot of time moving on from you, and I don't want to go back. I don't want to turn those pages back.
And he's like, but I'm like ready to be friends now. Like, I'm at a place where we could be friends. And I'm like, no. We part ways again. He leaves, I stay in Florida, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what to do. So I'm just like, I guess I'll just move on.
A couple months later, she texts and she's like, hey, you know what? I think we could be friends. It'd be okay. I'm like, cool, great. So now we're texting every once in a while back and forth. We're totally friends at this point. Nothing more than that, just talking. I'm still trying to talk to other girls, so we're not, there's no romantic interest there. So I end up moving back to Georgia a couple months after that. Still sporadically talking with Bekah. And then this one day I get this package in the mail.
So this is probably 6 months from the time that he had rejected me. I was like, something isn't right about this situation. Okay, so we've had all this history, this back and forth, and like we're still friends. Like, that's not normal. People don't do that. So in my head, I'm thinking, okay, we're either gonna get married or we're gonna marry other people and never talk to each other. And I didn't really want the second one. In my head, I was like, I want to marry Royce. So I decided to send him a box full of all of his
favorite things in there, like my favorite movie, my favorite candy.
Way to a man's heart is through his stomach, right? And I was like, okay, I want to ask him to come visit, but I want him to want me to come visit. So I was like softening his heart a little bit, right? Send him this box.
Opening that box, it just hits me. I'm like, oh crap. It just like threw me for a loop. I didn't even know what to do. I started like panicking. So I called my best friend. I'm like, bro, what? I don't even know what I'm feeling right now, but I think I like Bekah, but I don't want to, but I do. And this box, and it's just messing with my head. I don't even know what to do. And so we talked and we prayed. And then like a day or two later, she calls and she says,
hey, did you get the box? And he said, yes. And I was like, so I was thinking about coming for a visit. What do you think? And he was like, sure. And I was like, the box worked.
And that like threw me over the edge. I was like, wait. I told her yes, and very calmly told her yes, but inside it's like a hurricane, like, oh my gosh, I think I like Bekah. Oh, maybe I do want to get back with her again, but maybe I don't know. And like, why is she even coming here? And why did she send me this box? And what am I supposed to do? And I don't know what to do with my life. And it was just such a confusing time.
So I go visit him, and we're hanging out. I was staying at a mutual friend's house. I think I went for 2 days. Sunday comes around. I think I went to church with him that morning, and we're hanging out that afternoon, and like nothing has ever happened between us. Like, we're just friends. I knew going into it that I wasn't ever gonna say anything. My big gesture was making myself available. Like, here I am.
I thought Bekah was coming with this like agenda to like say this thing or do this thing, but it got to like Sunday afternoon, I realized Bekah's not gonna say anything. She's not gonna do anything. If anything is gonna happen from this moment, it's gotta be me that initiates it.
That Sunday afternoon, he looked down at me. I was watching HGTV or something. He was working on homework, and he was like,
"Isn't it weird that we can just pick up where we left off like nothing ever happened?"
I was like, what do you mean? He's like, people don't do this. They don't just like hang out and like we're hanging out like nothing has ever happened between us. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna be honest. I said, I wouldn't be here right now if I didn't think we had something left. And essentially, I just wanted to be really clear with where I was at. And I was like, I told him, I was like, I would marry you tomorrow if you would have me. And he was like,
what? I realized I did want to be with Bekah. And so I said, well, let's get back together and then see, we can talk about marriage.
We go our separate ways. So he's in Georgia, I'm still in Florida. About a week later, we were talking on the phone, and he's like, okay, I'm ready to get married. And that was it. About a week later, we had our entire wedding planned. So we met in 2006 and got married in 2014. And here we are today, 5 years later.
What I was wrong about in the beginning was that we didn't work together. And I think the way Bekah and I work together as a team and the way we complement each other with our differences is something that I never would have imagined. She pushes me in ways that no one else does, and that's really good for me. I'm really grateful that despite all my obstinance and preconceived notions about the way people are supposed to be and the way couples are supposed to act, Bekah was still willing to say yes to me and build a life with me. And I'm really happy and I'm really proud of the life that we've built together.
I would say that Royce is for sure my best friend, and I love being married to him. I don't think I have anything else to say. That's it. My side of the story. Now I'm gonna go fix my makeup.